What's up everyone, it's GaijinGamer here, back with episode 5 of How to Be a Noob in King's Raid 2021. Today we'll be discussing early game gear and farming locations. So without further ado, let's hop into it. Alrighty, we'll start off with Gear Awakening. And now this is something that you can do that really enhances the power of each and every one of your characters. And as you can see throughout your, pickup summons that cost 2,500 gems, you start to acquire a lot of T8 gear. As you can see down here, I've got a lot of these mana crystals down here. So what we're going to do is just show you the most optimal way to get a 0-star item into 5 stars. Something to note as well is that these percentages that I'm about to show you and how to awaken is the same process for both weapons, unique weapons, as well as gear and unique treasures. So just keep that in mind as well. So we'll start off here by opening up the item, and what we'll do is we'll go into here and hit the awaken gear. Now here, if we click on another piece of gear, as you can see, for your first upgrade with one item, it's 100%. So we'll go ahead and do this. And here we go. Now we have a 1-star piece of gear. Now what I would recommend from going 1-star to 2-star, there's two trains of thought. If you were to, go from 1 to 2-star and you only, use one of the items, so for example, if you had a 1-star unique weapon or treasure and you put another unique weapon or treasure in, it's going to be a 50% chance to do 2-star. Personally, I always do this, but if you were to stop, create a second 1-star, and then feed a 1-star into a 1-star, it then becomes a 100% chance instead of a 50% chance. I guess personally, I'm a bit of a risk taker, so I personally always go with the 50% chance, no matter what I'm rolling. So let's see if we're lucky. Nope, unfortunately not. However, something to note here is, as you can see, it's got a 50% chance, but as it's down here, you see a failure bonus of 16%. So in reality, I now have a 66% chance to then get a 2-star. So as you can see, we hit it, and it's just like we, used the same amount of materials as it would if we 100%ed from 2 1-stars, feeding them into each other. Now from a 2-star to a 3-star, I also still stick with the 25%. And the odds say that moving forward that the 25% is actually not bad, because you start to accumulate that failure bonus. As you can see, I failed one time. Let's see if I can hit the second one. Nope, failed this one. Now we have a 25% chance with a 16% failure bonus. As you can see, I was able to 3-star this item on my 3rd try. Now when you start to get to 3-star to 4-star, I personally never go with the 10%. So what I would do in this case, from 3-star to 4-star, is I would then make a 1-star first, and then I would feed that 1-star into the 3-star for a 25% chance. So go back. Now we have our 3-star, we awaken it, and then we feed our 1-star into it for a 25% chance. And the odds say that this is actually the best way to go about this. So as you can see, we failed the first time. Let's see, we're going to feed another 1-star because I had previously made that one. I failed that one, and now at this point, we feed 10 stars from this point on. Or, I'm sorry, I'm not 10 stars, 0 stars from here on, because it's still going to have the failure bonus, and it's still going to accumulate by 3% with a natural 10%. As you can see, I'm getting a little bit unlucky here, but that's not to be afraid of. It's going to happen in the game. Unfortunately, we're playing a gacha game, so you got to love it. At least they give us an accumulative failure bonus, which is always nice. I'm really kind of epic failing right now, which definitely sucks. But it's good to see that this can happen to you as well, and this can be happening when you're doing unique weapons. Thank God I'm not rolling unique weapons or treasures right now, because I'd be really heartbroken. So as you can see, things don't always go your way when you're rolling gear. In a big way, it looks as well. So we'll go ahead and hopefully we can hit this soon. Perfect. Finally, we got our 4-star. All right, now that we have our 4-star, the best way to get a 4 to a 5-star is to feed 2 2-stars into the 4-star if it doesn't hit into 5-star within that time. And then afterwards, you then feed 2 1-stars into the 4-star, and if it still doesn't work, then you feed 0 stars after that. So what do I mean by that? So first off, we have our 4-star, and then we're going to attempt to get a 2-star, which I always 50%. Let's see if we're able to hit that, and we do. That's awesome.
And so now from here, we will go with our 4-star, and then we'll feed it into our 2-star for the first 2-star. If this doesn't work, we'll feed in another 2-star. So now we have to create another 2-star. So we'll create the 1-star. We're going to go for the 50% afterwards. Here we go, 50%. Hopefully we get it. And let's see, awesome. Getting a little lucky now, thank God, because we had horrible RNG earlier. Gotta love playing gacha games. So as you can see, now we fed, this will be 2 2-stars. And then from here, we'll feed 2 1-stars if it failed, which it did, which is good. And I'd say this is the best route of going from a 4-star to a 5-star as far as the percentages go and best gear optimization. So now, as you see, we have our 10% into our 16%, and we're going to get 3% additional fail bonus if we fail, but luckily we got it. So there we are. That is upgrading into a 5-star piece of gear, and you can do that with unique weapons, unique treasures, or any form of gear. It's going to be the same thing across the board. No matter if you're tier 8, tier 7, all the way down to tier 1, it's the same percentages across the board. And I definitely recommend doing that. Another thing I want to show you real quick is that if you have a ton of gear, for example, instead of using unique treasures or unique weapons, as you can see, we have a ton of these mana stones. So one thing I like to do personally, and you might like to as well, just to save you a little bit of time, is instead of, trying to combine multiple items together, what we could do is just click 2 of them at one time, and it's going to add the percentages together. As you can see, it's like we're feeding a 1-star already into our gear, and it's a 100% chance. Same thing when we go 2-star. The more we click, the higher it goes up. So that's just one thing to think about as you're upgrading gear that you may farm from like dragons or raids or just throughout scenario as well. Next up, we'll cover which gear will best fit for which character as you're farming and as you pull for your pickup summons. I will recommend that early game that you almost fill your whole team with the Black Dragon set if possible. As you can see, I have some right here, and we'll just show you the bonus that it gives. As you can see, the 2 set gives bonus MP recovery per attack. For the 2 set, it gives 200, and then for the 4 set, it gives an additional 260. And now what that allows you to do is it actually allows you to spam all of your abilities on cooldown, because at the beginning of the game you tend to not be able to generate as much mana as you'd like to, and your skills are just staying on cooldown the entire time. So you're not utilizing all of your abilities on cooldown essentially, and thus you're decreasing the amount of damage, tanking, and healing you're able to do. So personally, for me, I tend to go all Black Dragon set for all of my characters until I get past the early game and start to evolve in the mid game. We'll just kind of cover over some of the other sets that you're able to get though. We have the HP for the Frost Dragon set, and these are the ones that you can get early on in the game from the first 4 dragons. We have the Poison set, which gives you crit resistance, which honestly, like granted, you might find a good piece of gear, which is okay to use, don't get me wrong, especially in the right situation, but this set is not so good in my opinion. It's probably one of the worst ones possible in the early game. This tends to be good for someone like Shockmay, by the way, as well. If you're able to get enough mana generation for Shockmay, Shockmay needs as much HP as you can get, so this is actually not a terrible set for Shockmay. And then finally we have the Fire set. And these are the first 4 dragons that you'll farm. We have Fire, Poison, Frost, and then the Black Dragon. And this gives you crit. We got the 2 set will give you 100 crit, and then the 4 set will give you an additional 130. Now, stats that you're looking for on different characters. Now, for your main DPS, you'll want to try to get 100% crit. And as you can see here, this gives 105 crit, which is actually, you move the decimal over 1 slot, it's actually 10.5% crit you're getting. If you have 1,000 crit, you have a 100% chance to crit on a character, just so you guys are tracking. Sometimes that's a little confusing. But other than that, if you're able to get 100% crit on a character, you then want to get as much attack percentage and, potentially some crit damage if possible. And also penetration is pretty important too, but that's kind of for later on. I would just focus on getting your crit as close to 100% as possible, as well as having a high attack for the early game. Moving on to healers, you kind of want a mixture of stuff. You want a little bit of survivability, which is like HP percentage,
Actually, like attack speed works very well on healers. I would definitely prioritize that as well. And then attack percentage as well, because healers actually scale their heals off of attack percentage. Um, so you definitely want to look out for stuff with like HP percentage, attack speed, and attack percentage. That'd be a good, 3 set, and then maybe an additional like attack speed for the fourth slot as well. Now finally for tanks. Tanks are a little tricky and it very much depends on which tank you use. Shockmay definitely wants as much HP percentage as you can get him, but other tanks tend to, want HP, just anything defensive will work early game for a tank. As long as you're able to generate enough mana for all of your characters, that's really the important part. That's why I like to run Black Dragon set on all of my characters early game. So we'll kind of progress into a later game where I start to include some of these other sets here as well. But for now, we'll just focus on the Black Dragon set until we kind of evolve from early game to mid game. All right, before we move on, I also want to mention that if you have Frey or Fallen Frey, it's also, please note that you would want to get every percentage attack line that you can on the gear. So if you, best case scenario, this is maybe one of those times that you want to go into your consumables and you have these tickets for the T8 Swiftness Dragon sets here with the 4 options. And you'll go in and you'll select the robes that, or every single piece that, your Frey or Fallen Frey can use. And then select attack percentage down the line. This will allow you to get the best possible gear for Frey or Fallen Frey, as not only do their heals scale with attack percentage, but the shields they create for your teams also scale with their attack percentage as well, and they tend to be pretty dang big. And so it's really important that you get as much attack as possible for those 2 characters. Now, moving on to weapons and which runes to put on weapons. As you can see, I have my Rebel class weapon that I'm not even able to use because I don't have the character yet. But what I will use for Rebel class early on is just a bunch of attack percentage runes. And I recommend you do the same for your DPS in the early game. As you can see, I'm equipping all of those. If I had Frey or Fallen Frey, I would also use these attack percentage runes on their unique weapons as well, or just weapons that you may be using. Next up, we have tanks and healers. Depending on if you have enough mana for your tank or healer, and if you're able to get it like the Black Dragon set, I would recommend using, not this one, but the MP recovery per attack. If you start to get to a point where you're comfortable and all of your skills are being able to be used as soon as they come off cooldown, then maybe I would take off these MP per recovery and then either put these blue runes on for tanks or the attack percentage for healers. So just something to think about as you kind of progress through the game. Now finally, before we move on to farming locations, what I'd like to mention is that in these pieces of gear here, as you can see your chest piece and your off piece, you'll have different types of runes that are able to be equipped. I would recommend for your chest piece to go to crit damage, if you're lucky enough to get one, for your main DPS, and then use blue runes of any type on the early game as far as your your tank goes. And then honestly, I would also use the defensive rune for your healers if they're struggling to stay alive, or just anything that kind of works in that slot for your healers. And then finally, for your off-piece set, I would also recommend if you're able to get like a crit rate for this circle slot here, I would definitely go with that for your main DPS, and then something defensive, it could be pretty much any blue rune for your tank, and just something that works for a healer as well. It's not too important for those 2 things, but I would definitely recommend those offensive runes for your main DPS early game. Finally, some early game farming, places that I would recommend is first and foremost, we need to clear Stockade each and every day on cooldown if possible. As you see, I still have 4 out of 4 uses, so I'm kind of in the bad boy zone right now, but you need to go into here and they'll kind of progressively go down and give you more materials as you're able to kill the higher stages and unlock more materials. Ones that I would focus on as a newer player is you tend to get a lot of fragments from the beginning of the game, so they're not as important to focus on. Skill books are a great place to start if you're a beginning player. EXP can be, however, early game it's not as much focused because there's alternate ways of obtaining a large amount of EXP. But gold, I would focus on skill book dungeons and the gold dungeon as a newer player. Now we'll move on to other places to farm as a newer player. And one place that I would recommend is any of the EXP places on the maps. As you see, I'll go into 7-1 and we'll kind of go up to on the top of the map and you'll see an EXP location, as you can see right here. Now this place right here, 7-8-1, will give you more EXP than any of the other locations on the map. As you can see, here's the amount of EXP that you can acquire. 345,219. And if we go to a regular, 7-8, it's going to give me a third of that, 115,000. And that will hold true for every single map, no matter which chapter that you're on. As you can see, chapter 8 also has the same EXP dungeon. So we'll just kind of show you real quick. So I would recommend farming these as well. Now these are a very good place to farm if you're stuck somewhere, as most of the times heroes can get through chapter 8 if they're as high of level as possible. Now you'll have to get to level 70 and then transcend them twice to be able to get to level 90 or 90 plus. And from there, if you're able to transcend a character twice, you can then increase its power immensely. So I would recommend then farming these EXP locations thereafter. So that's something to look into if you're starting to struggle, is leveling up your characters. The second thing I would recommend is going into here and then going into the raid zone over here and then going and starting to farm some dragons for some better gear. Like we talked about earlier, I would start with the black dragon and work my way up. And from here, you'll create raid, and oftentimes, like if you can find a party, great, but a lot of times you tend to not be able to when you're like a lower rank in the tier 6s. But you'll just hit the single, so that way you can use 6 of your own characters. As you can see, you can fill up the team here, and then you can move to the sub team and then fill up your characters here as well. And it'll give you a better chance at clearing these dungeons. Now, like I said, I would recommend farming these dragon locations. Just any of them really, but I would definitely focus on this black dragon set to get you a full set of black dragon. But yeah, those are the places that I recommend farming early, and I hope you got something from the guide about the gear today. So without further ado, until the next time, I'm GaijinGamer, signing out.